are we going to have some cost savings that will get at that? Will we have a better use of our facilities? Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about what might some better educational opportunities be for kids and what might those be. So those are some of the things I think you're really going to want to think about as we move through this process. When you're deciding is this advisable or not. We're going to get some, because remember, a lot of the heart of this whole Act 46, the heart of it is equity and access for kids. That's really at the heart of it. And yeah, we hope we hope the taxpayers will benefit from that, but it was very intentional to say that the students, because we don't want to lose sight of that. Because that's what we really, really want to make a difference for, as for our kiddos. And so I think I've spoken more options. New pre-K board will have flexibility. Can you clarify for us what did that mean?
I think what we were, that was a little bit hard to put into words, but basically what we were thinking was that in Rupert and Pollitt, we don't have a pre-K through 12 system. And so it doesn't really follow students their entire career. They're at the Meadowy School, they're under UD 47, and then they're under either the Pollitt or the Rupert board, and there's not a lot of follow through after that to report back to Meadowy School how well prepared they were for wherever they decided to go. And so we thought that a pre-K through 12 system would address that better.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And then larger sense of community was the last one down here. And you kind of heard that a lot when they were talking about Act 46 when the discussion was new. People were saying we need to redefine what local means, and that's hard for us to do, but it may be a different definition than what we originally had. So great. So we'll hold on to these. The next one, just want you to think about what potential challenges, and I'm sure you've heard some of those things from your community and things that you're worried about. What potential challenges might be a result of this merger? What are you looking at as a challenge?
We used to get
A little bit loud.
films we used to have film parties in our barn.
So just listening in on groups, it's a little easier to think about your challenges and what you're worried about than the opportunities right now. And so many of these will get at the heart of our questions. Maybe not so much that loss of local control, but it will. When we talk about the representation, how's that going to feel? That's going to be, I think, a hot topic, right? When we talk about representation on boards. And then, we know designation is going to be huge. Designation versus choice is going to be a huge topic in this merger. We've got the cost, so here we are with the finance thing again. That loss of that community part. Flexibility versus commonness. Can someone, I just don't know, can you clarify for the groups?
I know that was my comment. It was just that we have extra flexibility and opportunities, but there's a consistency sometimes with a bigger district too.
Yep. Yep. And this one, if you can't read off screen for you, this was again the choice versus designation. Potential for higher taxes and costs. Addressing the debts and assets will be a challenge. Loss of local control and involvement. The pressure to feel pressure to close the school, that's a real concern. And the loss or gain around real estate. We don't really know how that will play out. Yeah. Okay? So we'll hold on to these and keep these, and as we will put these in I think that Sonia's already captured all of this, so you'll have this as a document to come back around to, but we will get at the heart of many of these questions. Not all, we'll talk about that, that loss of that feeling of local, though it's not one of our questions, but it's something that hopefully we'll get some resolution on for ourselves. I put the others out. If there's something, and you don't have to get up right now, but I'll just take one of those and post it up here. If there was something else you're thinking about that didn't fall in under any of this, just make sure you record that for us. Okay? I'll stick the other one up here. I'm done, Sue.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is enrollment and tuition data tuition data. This was something that we asked for at our last meeting, and we've been provided some information. Do you have extras of those to give to our audience?
I had a bunch of extra agendas, and that was attached to it, and I gave out.
Okay.
I have one or two.
I have
an extra one.
And audience, you can get all of these things on the brsu.org website too, if you want that.
So I know this was in our packet. Do committee members have questions on any of this information, or does it lead you to want to have more information? Sorry.
Me.
Oh, I thought you were pointing over there.
I wonder if we could get a map of the area and just show the mileage between the schools.
Sure.
Including the secondary schools.
Yep.
Just so we get a feeling of the distance kids are traveling or might have to travel in a village district.
Especially in the winter time.
Could I add to that, we have these announced tuition costs, but does that include transportation, or are we looking at the potential? I mean, to really consider this, we now have to consider tuition, but the cost of transport.
Yeah, transportation, it doesn't include the transportation costs in those tuition rates, but transportation is dealt with differently by communities. For example, some of our communities provide transportation to our secondary schools, and some do not. So it's really up to the board as to what decisions they want to make about providing transportation. Boards are not obligated to provide transportation to students to school, but most of them do.
Okay. But I think in terms of, we're talking specific Rupert, Paul, Wells.
Yeah.
So I think we should be considering tuition costs and transportation costs
Yeah.
and what they would be.
And I think the total cost you're going to look at.
That could make a
yeah.
huge difference.
Yeah.
So when we do our big request for information, we want to add transportation costs to that.
And I think Bill spoke earlier too, to the costs of schools other than the ones that we have right now, like the private schools. He spoke to that earlier, that's not on this list. Like we have a whole big sale, but if we were looking at designation versus not designation, what is the cost of these other schools? You know, would it be up to the state average? What could the possible top be if we chose to do whatever they charge? So that would be information.
So tuition for other schools listed on here?
Yeah, tuition and transportation.
Okay.
But if we chose choice, the amount that is paid would be, for independent schools, would be up to the state average, correct?
Unless the town voted differently, yes.
They could vote to go for the full.
And they can vote to go different amounts for different schools. I deal with that in Lynn Hall. They give different amounts. In Lynn Hall, they give different amounts to different schools.
But they can't,
They kind of look at where do most of their kids go. So that's just totally under their purview.
but they can't vote to go less than the state average, correct?
Well, that's not true, because Wells pays less than the state average.
Under Act 46, they'll still be able to do that?
But my belief will be that the board will have to set the same rate for everybody. That's my,
Don't you have a special law though? For
wait, we have a special law. Wells has a special law that allows them to pay less, but, and as does Rupert and Pollitt. Other school districts do not have a special law to do that.
And that law is clear and independent of Act 46? So
Yes.
Yes.
But
I
But I
at
have one
40,
person speaking at a time.
oh, I
Joe,
apologize.
Go ahead. Joe, you go ahead, Joe.
My understanding is from Donna Savage, who is the attorney in charge of Act 46 for the Agency of Education, is once a new school district is formed amongst these school districts, then unless the law is changed, this board would only be allowed, the new board would only be allowed, or this study committee, to designate Vermont school districts until the law is changed, because only the towns of Wells, Pollitt, and Rupert currently have that ability to do that, and those school districts will no longer exist if you merge into a new structure.
John?
The section that we're talking about, and the lady from the audience mentioned 827, and in your book on Act 46, on page 54, is the start of that revised is amended to read section 45, so just for your reference to see that. 54.
It says page 54 of 64. It's under the Act 46
It says
tab.
designation of secondary schools, just for your reference when you have a chance to read it.
So Sue, for point of clarification, on just all of the reports where people are asking for, we're just making a list of that, but, you know, it's not like for the next meeting, but to make sure that we capture that when we get to
Okay.
that part. Is that how I'm interpreting it?
Yes, because I think we want to, I think what I've heard from the committee members is that we want to have a session with our consultant and
Right.
be able to give you a, hopefully a comprehensive list
Yeah,
of information that we would like.
that would be good.
Okay.
I guess I would ask too, just for a clarification on that, on the Act 46 versus this 827, is it, as far as I understand, we have choice with designation now, right? So if we designate and then vote for the lower tuition rate again, it almost will be like nothing would change. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what we have now.
Well, actually, designation, you know, people get riled, oh, I don't want my kid to go to Granville. Designation, in effect, is really a tuition level.
Right. But Paul at Wells and Rupert let their students go to other schools with that tuition, with designated tuition rate.
Right.
Yes.
So essentially, so that's, I guess what I'm asking is that why I asked about the state average was that I was under the impression that with the new Act 46, choice versus designation, that's essentially what it meant, was the choice meant up to the state average, and designation meant otherwise, or the tuition rate.
The specifically said.
Right. So I guess under the new law, which I guess I just, like, yeah, some clarification, and I guess you probably know more about it, about changing the,
Well, if we could do
Statute.
a side-by-side of what 827 is pre-Act 46 and what is changed, then we can better judge what it does. I mean, I have some questions, and I've shared it with some of the folks, is that if there isn't competition between Poultney and Granville, what prevents Poultney from charging 15.5?
absolutely nothing.
Which in some cases would double the secondary costs. So there's that type of stuff involved too.
Joan?
I just want to make a clarifying point, because there's some confusion, because most of the people from, my guess is most of the people from Rupert probably send their students to Bernburg or Long Trail. Those are private, independent schools, so we pay the average state Union High School tuition rate. But if you chose a public school like Rutland City or Mill River, then you have to pay their actual announced tuition rate, which could be higher than the state average. So I just wanted to make that clarifying point, because it's very confusing. There's a lot of moving pieces in the puzzle.
Are there any other committee member questions or anything you want to add to our request for data that we'll put in it when we have our consultant here? No? Okay.
More may come. as
Okay,
we get
well, we'll definitely,
digest
yeah, we'll definitely hold on to this information because I think we're gonna probably need to digest it a little bit more. Okay, we are near the end of our agenda. We are at the item for monitoring process and performance. And how do I get your computer to come back up, Jeff?
Just touch the trackpad.
Oh, there we go, okay. So the norms that we established earlier were staying focused on the agenda, following time limits, speaking when recognized, no interrupting or side conversations, respecting everyone's input, being prepared and on time, being open-minded, asking for clarification if needed, and citing evidence, not just opinions. And it would be helpful to know from committee members whether you think that we stuck with our ideas on this, or are there any areas that we need to improve on for our next meeting?
I think we did pretty well.
I think time. Okay.
Tired.
All right. Well, our next meeting, as I mentioned previously, is on July 13th at 7 o'clock. And it is at the Wells School. We're trying to rotate our meetings between the three towns, so we'll go back to Wells for that one. And we will send out a meeting wizard request for another July meeting that will be probably lengthier, where we can get into more of the information that we need.